Hi, Mike.
Hey, good morning, Gary.
How are you today?
Actually, I'm great.
Folks, I'd like to introduce you to Michael AB Robbins. He's an attorney out of Westboro, works for Crawley and Cummings. What else can I say about you? Father to Ben, father to Josiah.
Yeah, my foster son. So I'm a foster parent as well. Let's see, I've been practicing that for 22 years.
Why do they call it practicing?
Because it's not a mastery. I learn stuff every day. So one of these days I'll get it right. You know,
Gary.
Keep practicing.
So as we talked about putting together this show, one of the things that I was charged with, sounds like I just went to the police department.
There you go.
Another was bringing folks in, and you completely on a different plane. We're talking about, I've got this fraud case. It's really cool. I want to tell people about it so that it doesn't happen to them. So you intentionally, I never asked the follow-up question. Well, tell me about the fraud case, because we're going to get together and do it now.
Yeah.
So tell me about the fraud case.
I would not use the adjective cool. No, heart-rending, very stressful, very intense, very complicated. I had, unfortunately...
You know what complicated means? Just that you don't understand it.
Yeah, I got a lesson in it as well. So that goes back to...
So set it up.
So the background on this is that what happened, we had a kind of confluence of bad situations that resulted in a really challenging outcome. And what happened was we had a buyer who was paying cash for a property. So when they're buying cash, they're being their own bank and financing. In this case, it was about a $750,000 purchase. And what had happened was you had a buyer who was in her early 70s and not very technology savvy.
Yeah.
We also had her agent, also a bit older, a little less tech savvy.
I'm hearing an age discrimination thing come up.
Absolutely. I am relaying the facts of the situation as they are, but I think I've had clients that have had the similar, who were more tech savvy.
Yep.
That had the similar set of issues.
Keep telling your story, because I will keep interrupting.
That's okay. That's what we...
You know that.
Yes, absolutely. So we have two people who are less than perfectly tech savvy.
Okay.
And what had happened, and this is, again, now going through and being able to look back on what had happened, we had the realtor's email get hacked.
Okay.
The realtor was using I forget the name of it. It was like a generic email account. It wasn't a corporate email account.
Was it like a Google, an AOL?
It was a Microsoft Hotmail.
Okay, Hotmail.
So it was a Hotmail account that had been compromised. And what happens is fraudsters and the FBI continually referred to the people involved as money launderers.
Okay.
So they would use the term money launderers. So the money launderers, what they do is they use sophisticated methods to breach the realtors. They identify realtors. They attack them. And what they do is then they sit and wait for a circumstance like this, where the buyer's paying cash. What they did then is they received the wiring instructions. They, the realtor, was part of the email chain from my office. So at the beginning, when we start a purchase file, we set, my paralegal sends a list of, hey, listen, this is who I am. These are going to be the kind of the next steps. And by the way, we're going to be sending you these wiring instructions by secure mail. These have to be verified before you remit any funds. What had then happened is we approached the closing date. My paralegal sent the wiring instructions to both the buyer and the buyer's agent.
Okay.
And we do that as a way to, again, try to incorporate all of the stakeholders with respect to the purchase, so they know, hey, listen, here are the wiring instructions. Let's make sure we verify these.
Right.
That was on a Thursday. On a Friday.
The next day?
The following Friday.
So I'm sorry.
Yep.
Tomorrow or a week from tomorrow?
No, it would be tomorrow.
Okay.
So on a Thursday, my paralegal sent the wiring instructions that were sent securely.
Yep.
But since the fraudsters had compromised the agent's email,
Yep.
they're able to then also access those instructions. What they did is they created a fictitious email for myself and my paralegal. So they used my last name. So my email is mrobbins@crawleycummings.com. And what they did is they removed a B and they removed an M.
You have that Michael AB thing going.
There it is. But it was Mike Robbins instead of Robbins. And instead of Crawley and Cummings with 2 M's, it was with 1 M. And they did the same thing. And so they sent a subsequent email that looked exactly like the previous email with my paralegal on it. And then they sent these fictitious wiring instructions or falsified wiring instructions to both parties, unsecured. And the wiring instructions had been cut and pasted. And so what had happened was the wiring instructions have our phone number, but it was missing a digit. It had our fax number, but it was missing a digit. It still had my firm as the recipient, but the routing, account number, and bank had changed. So what happens is this was the Friday before a holiday weekend.
Okay.
And what happened is the money launderers prompted the buyer to the bad guys prompted the buyer to please send the money now because of the holiday weekend. And they do that intentionally to buy themselves time to move the money out of the account. And that's a known in our industry. We know that the Friday before a holiday weekend is a day that the bad guys want to use in order to get those funds out to they want to get the account funded and then move that money out of the account. And so my client, to her loss, literally practically printed those instructions, ran to her lender, who on a Friday afternoon, which they should have known was a fraudulent day, allowed her remit, let's just call it $650,000 to wiring instructions that if you took a second look at, were pretty chopped up.
Okay.
When you fill out a wire form, whether it's online or in person, it's going to ask you for the number. The number is missing. It's going to say, did you call the people involved to verify these? They didn't. There were some firewalls at that institution that were compromised that should have been followed more adherently. Here you have a woman by her age is in a protected class on a Friday before a holiday weekend with pretty chopped up wiring instructions. Nonetheless, that $650,000 went out that Friday. The following week, on Tuesday, the client and the agent were like, hey, we want to make sure you got the money. And I'm like, no, I don't think we've received it. And the moment I contacted my bookkeeper, I knew something was wrong. And at that point now, it's a frenzy. We contacted Citi. Citi was the receiving bank. And it took I instantly knew that there was a problem. And she was like, well, you sent these email instructions to us. And I go, I don't have that email forwarded to me. And then I saw the fictitious email and account.
So at that instant,
yeah,
did your heart sink?
Oh my God.
Because at this point, you're talking the little elderly lady
is lost.
Is out
$650,000. That's it.
And that's got to make you nauseous.
That's the exact right. So I'll cut to the end. We were able to get $649,000 back. And the only reason we were able to get any money back is the bank account that the funds had been sent to had already been flagged by Citi and the FBI as a money laundering account. It took little over 2 weeks I always say, like, my job as an attorney is to advise and guide clients and professionals through the practice of buying and selling homes. Buying and selling homes, it's the largest purchase of a person's life, typically.
Right.
I think it's a key foundation to wealth. I believe in real estate. I invest in real estate. My job is to try to help people through kind of what is a very emotionally charged and financially charged process. I had a pit in my stomach. I lost sleep. It took 2 weeks. When we were at that closing, there was definitely a couple tears and quite a few hugs.
How was the client? I can see you sitting there crying.
Oh man, I was just so happy.
So this is a bad situation.
This is a bad situation.
And so the question I would ask is, how would you advise your other clients or your future clients going forward to not be in that situation?
You know, it's always the fence at the top of the hill. It was that mixture of, you know, the whole Irish luck joke. Like, you know, she got robbed.
Yep.
But she lost $902,000. I cannot understand how she lost it, but she did. She lost
fees.
$902, not the $1,000. 900, yes.
It's clearly fees.
Not on my end. But
so you use an ATM at a non-bank, yeah.
But she was essentially made whole by being lucky. It was lucky that this.
So it wasn't like an insurance thing.
No, I think it was lucky that the account had been flagged. The FBI told me that over $23 million of fraudulent activity had been used through this account.
Wow.
So this is the size and scale of what's going on here. I also have a question and a challenge. The receiving bank, when they get the instructions, it's A, B, and C. The name on the account, the routing number, and the account number. Well, those three things didn't match, but the money still went in that account. I felt like there were some real issues on the receiving bank, on the sending bank, on...
So the basic reasonable checks and balances that are in place
weren't sufficient.
And I'm going to hypothesize that, you know, Friday of a 3-day weekend, some people in different banks are trying to get out the door.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I'm not right. Throwing stones.
Nope. I think that's the reality of the human experience.
Right. Wow, Mike.
And so it had a positive ending. What I'm trying to do is make that fence more of a wall at the top.
Okay.
So what I've been doing subsequently, so let's just say, Gary, you're purchasing a home, whether it's cash or you're putting a sizable amount down, and you're going to be needing to remit those funds by wire. Two things. If it's going to be a significant amount of money, let's say your closing's a month out. Gary, you can do two things. You can get me a certified bank check today for my estimate, or we are going to go through, when I do a purchase and sale review, I review that typically by Zoom. And what I'm going to be doing going forward is we're also going to be reviewing the wiring instructions at that very first meeting. And I'm just, from a practical standpoint, I've got to figure this out, but I'll be using like a dot loop service because I want the buyers to sign the wiring instructions that they're going to be using. Again, we had joked about having some ageism at the beginning. I had a very similar set of circumstances happen. I had a client, though. She was much younger. She was in Paris, and she was using a Paris cafe's Wi-Fi, and they were able to compromise her email. Yep. And it was interesting. In our purchase and sale review, and when we go over the wiring instructions, they go, hey, listen, these will never change. And then she received a fictitious email. Again, they use photos. In this case, they had made a fake photo of a paralegal at my office. And what they did is they go, oh, our wiring instructions had changed. And she was about to send that wire, and then she called me. She was like, hey, I got this email. I want to make sure. And I was able to prevent that from those funds from going out. But there was a situation where, by using a unsecured hotspot, the hackers were able to penetrate her account, and then very quickly see through her emails, send the fake wiring instructions, fake email, all of those things. And so it's again, really trying to build that wall at really at the top of the hill, as opposed to trying to deal with things at the bottom.
I have a client who pays rent with money orders. And, once a month runs over to Walmart. You can't get over $1,000, so it's 2 money orders. And I say to her, how do you know that it got where it was supposed to go? Because she has a record of getting the money orders, but nothing that shows where it's delivered. She doesn't get anything back. Paying rent with money orders just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I've never seen it as a landlord. I love Zelle, PayPal, and Venmo.
Right.
It's documented for a tax. Like I declare I want the income. And so I declare all of that. So from an accounting standpoint, it's really easy. In my leases, I don't have it any other way.
Yeah.
You can't pay me by any other means other than Zelle, PayPal, or Venmo. Those are your 3 choices. If you don't have that, you need to get it.
So what would you suggest to our viewers as kind of a closing thought on this show today?
For anyone who's considering sending money, whether it's for a car purchase, any substantial amount of funds, call the recipient directly yourself. Don't use any information that you've received. Google. I mean, we live in a world where you can pretty much contact anyone at any time. And it was interesting, is to circle back to the wire fraud. The wire fraud department at Citi contacted us and was like, we Googled Crawley and Cummings. We called the office. They're like, do you have a client that's missing $650,000? And we're like, we do.
Wow.
So there was a way.
Lucky they didn't go to the Dedham office.
Right.
Because they'd say, we don't know.
My God, don't get me started on that. Mike Robbins?
Yeah.
He doesn't work here. Yeah.
Exactly. We're teasing because Mike's part of a larger company, and their larger company's headquarters is over in Dedham. And when you call the Dedham office, they don't necessarily all know where Mike Robbins is sitting at 45 Lyman Street in Westboro.
Yeah, no. Or if I'm in the Boston office.
Right.
Or Rhode Island. So, yeah, no. That's why I give my cell phone.
So check and make sure that, the people at the other end know that.
Assume the wiring instructions that you get are false.
Okay.
Don't trust and then verify.
I like that.
And I think for me, it's just trying to work a system that's effective on the front end with clients, that's positive and reassuring.
Well, with that thought, kind of a weird time that we live in, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting because what happens is the banks smartly, it used to be that for most banks, and it's still the case, you need to go in person to send the wire.
Yep.
Larger financial institutions, say Bank of America, for example, they'll have you do the wire over your own computer.
Right.
And what I like, if I know the client is moving money from like Capital One, Bank of America, I go, call me. We'll go through the wiring instructions together.
That's good.
Yeah, because what happens is just some odd nuances that I'm familiar. We do dozens of wires every single day. I'm very familiar with that process. For most people, they've never done it before. And I go, hey, listen, this is a perfect opportunity for us to just go through this together.
I do Venmo.
God, if I could do Venmo, I'd be so much more relaxed.
Last thoughts for our viewers.
Really, anytime you're going to be wiring funds, you want to understand and work with professionals that you rely on, that you trust, and have an established relationship. Don't just send money because you get the email to please send the money right away. And it's a holiday weekend, so don't do that. But when in doubt, call the person that you are wanting to have the funds received by personally.
Michael, I thank you for coming out and participating today, and I'm sure our viewers will learn something from this that probably horrify many of them.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing if you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$650,000.
So with that, we bring this episode to a close.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.